All right, all right, all right. What's going on, my brother? Welcome to the championship rounds, with Essex County's own King Amin, moderated by myself. Jay, self-described casual boxing fan. Here we talk about boxing news and everything in between. What's going on, my brother? How you feeling today?
Not much, man. Not much, man.
All right, I see you. See you on camera, drippy. You got the daddy hat on and tie-dye. I ain't mad at you.
Yeah, man. Got to get your dad wave on, man.
Nah, I hear you, man. I'm still in that. I'm still in the work swag. Well, without further ado, let's get into it, man. Let's get into it. So the first thing we're gonna talk about is the Alvarez versus the Billy Joe Saunders fight. It's 3 titles on the line. 60,000 fans gonna be in attendance in Texas. So I just want to know your thoughts of that fight. What are you expecting from it? Give us something.
That's supposed to be the next big fight, really, because it's Canelo. And it's an international flair to it. Also, the world is opening back up. So you're talking about, 60, 70,000 fans. I think it's going to be in Miami or Dallas. I think Miami.
Yeah, it's going to be at Texas Stadium.
Texas Stadium. So, I think we're going to start seeing that. Even New Jersey, you see they're talking about restaurants of 50% capacity. I'm getting the surveys already. Do we want our kids to start back in April on a modified schedule, or, what's going to happen? So as far as the fight goes, we're opening back up. It's a good fight to open up to that big. Boxing fans are going to be pleased because purists will know Billy Joe Saunders' skill, and casuals might want to see if Canelo's the real deal or not. So it's a good fight. It's a good fight.
Okay. Who do you see coming out of this? Any possible surprises? What? If I'm trying to lay down a DraftKings bet, let me know. Who should I put my money on?
They don't have odds, and I'm sure they do. But for Billy Joe, like the reality of those odds, because even what most people think. So a lot of people have been talking about the fight. It'll be similar as far as strategy to what Canelo did with Triple G. People thought that it was going to be, especially in the second fight, people thought it was going to be bulls colliding. But Canelo started boxing and rolling punches. He said, oh, y'all thought he jabbed my head off the first fight? So now I'm going to stand in the pocket, roll the punches, in an encounter, I might have to eat it. So he changed his strategy with a slick boxer. Remember that rhythm thing we talked about? So Billy Joe is a slick rhythm type fighter. But that doesn't mean Canelo's going to bull rush him. He's probably going to make Canelo press the action because you got to beat the champ. So he can't dance around Canelo and say, I didn't get knocked out and I don't have any bruises, so I won. He's got to press the action somehow. So, Canelo's going to win that one.
You definitely got to beat the champ. That's how you lose a decision. We all know that. You know what I mean? So for the casual fan out here, I'm sure everybody's heard of Canelo Alvarez. You know what I mean? National, international name. But what can the casual fan expect when you see Canelo? Like, what's his style like? What do you see out of him? Am I going to be bored to death or what?
You're not going to be bored. The problem with a Canelo event is that you're going to be unimpressed because you're going to see him do things and you're going to say, well, that guy didn't present much of a challenge. But I think what people have to forget, and again, it's not dismissing any fighter he fight for their lack of preparation, but you could have practiced in the gym, but once you're in front of somebody like Canelo and what you thought he was going to do, he don't do, or he's faster than you thought he was, a lot of times you just get caught with your hands in your pocket, so to speak. So it's just, like a lot of people give Adrian Broner that problem, say he just keep his hands in his pockets because he's concerned about what the opponent's going to do to the point of he can't respond appropriately. So he just...
Now, let me ask you this. Of course, anticipating your opponent is an important part of any type of, contact sport. But from what I hear what you're saying, it almost seems like it's impeding his offenses, or maybe he's thinking too much or not as confident in his own skills. But where are you at with that? What you think?
I mean, it could also too, and men hate to realize this. But a man hates to look at another man and realize they're outmatched.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out a way to ease yourself or to remove or extract yourself from that situation. And with Canelo, like I said, so a casual fan, you're watching him and he's going to get rid of somebody. And we may look at it and say, man, he beat that guy up. But you don't understand, that guy might have been training 8 weeks and he just stood in front of Canelo and was like, yo, this guy's fast and he hits hard. And I was throwing everything at him and he rolled it. And then when I hit him with my best punch, he winked at me.
Right.
So, you know, Canelo is a Canelo. And Canelo, like if you just look at boxing education, Canelo got a PhD from that Floyd Mayweather loss.
Okay.
And not just what you learn in the ring, but how you respond to that. He didn't take it as a loss and said, he took it, yo, all right, cool. On to the next one.
Right.
And he's been rolling ever since.
Okay. So in terms of to kind of talk about the public health implications of the fight, you kind of started talking about that a little earlier. But I kind of wanted to just first, you know, talk about what people should expect. But 60,000 people in Texas, right? So we are in the middle of a pandemic. I know what my thoughts is. I'll reserve my thoughts until you're done. But I want to know, how do you feel about bringing 60,000 people together? I mean, it is Cowboy Stadium, you know, it's Cowboy stand-up. But, and so we know that they have the retractable roof and all that. So we don't know if that's going to be open. Obviously, if it is open, that should be a factor. But we still got 60,000 people in one space in the midst of a pandemic, 500,000 people in this country dead. So, do you think it's responsible, irresponsible? I know what it does for boxing right now. I know that's a great thing. But just in terms of public health, what do you think?
I mean, it's a 50-50 sword. I'm not sure what the numbers are as far as Texas, but, you know, we're talking.
Texas is off the chain.
And I can imagine, but I guess what I'm saying is if they're doing 50% capacity and Cowboy Stadium is holding 110, and they said we're bringing in 60,000 people, we're going to space them out. Mm-hmm. If they stay true to it, then in theory, that should go well. You know, and the idea of a public event, you know, a sense of normality, you know, but at the same time, I think money corrupts everything. There are fighters that have taken fights without the same crowd, you know, and when we talk later, we're going to talk, there are fighters taking fights where Anthony Joshua took a fight, you know, with a small crowd, you know?
Right.
So it's fighters taking fights that don't feel like they need that much because, you know, it's the financial implications, the health implications are at risk because of that, you know, cramming the people in there, but you know, it's not safe science, but I suppose they're using some sort of science, man.
I mean, you could probably figure where I'm gonna come from on this. I think it's great for boxing. I think it's terrible for just about everyone else, right? You're gonna have people flying in from all over the country. I don't know what the protocol is in terms of testing, not testing, but it's gonna be impossible to contact trace if something does happen. And we got 60,000 people in one place. My issue with this, and you know, we're gonna keep it boxing, you know, so I'm gonna keep this brief. My issue with this is not taking issue directly with what you said, but this normality thing. Like when I keep hearing we need to go back to normal, we need to go back to normal. That's true, you know what I mean? But the circumstances, the environment we in right now is abnormal. So my rebuttal is like all of us, like we gotta adjust to the times now, you know, because we could open everything up right now and feel normal, and the pandemic's still gonna be there. I mean, COVID-19 is still gonna be there, new strains, new variants. So again, I think this is definitely about money. You know, number one, because Jerry Jones is the owner of the venue that it's at, so we know that's
your man,
money.
Jerry Jones.
My man. And just about, I think it's three. Well, just about whoever the promoter is on this fight. You know all the major, but we know that where their concerns are too. That's my whole point. It's about the almighty dollar. You know. So again, I think it's irresponsible. I think it's going to be exciting to see all of those people in one place, right? Because we haven't seen that. But again, the health implications of it moving forward, I don't think it's a good thing. I mean, Jerry Jones is going to make some money. Canelo Alvarez is going to have some great buzz for the fight, you know. but I just think it's a bad decision, and it's just bad timing. And I just think the way it looks with 500,000 people in the ground just looks bad. That's my opinion. But
you know, I would agree to that point too, as far as adjustments. I wish that the business model, you remember how the music industry had to adjust to the lack of physical copies? You just have to adjust, right? So
right.
Now you have to treat your music as more of a premium. No more throwaway songs and mixtapes. Everything is you know, for premium. If boxing followed the same model in the sense that no more throwaway fights, no more tomato cans and bullshit fights. Every fight has to count, because we cannot count on getting a large gate. So we have to expect that, hey, we got to put the best fighters in the ring, and that's what's going to draw the pay-per-views or the streaming numbers we're looking for.
Word.
We can forget about the gates. Total in agreement with you for adjustment.
Yeah, that's a good solution, you know, but at least in the meantime, we could see it affecting their bottom line. So again, I think it's an excellent solution. All right, so on to the next article. So next article kind of talks about Mike Tyson, somebody we're all familiar with. Was talking about fight number 2, exhibition fight number 2. Now he announced that this new fight on his podcast a couple of weeks ago. I think Canelo was actually on there when he announced it. He didn't say who he was fighting, but you know, you do a little bit of research below the surface. You know, Evander Holyfield's name is floating around. So, 2 perspectives. You know, are you even interested? Are we digging up old bones here? Have we heard enough? And what are we going to see in the ring? Because, you know, again, the Tyson Roy Jones fight, you know, everybody has their own opinion on it. Regardless of whether you thought that it was a great showing or not, I think a lot of us were caught up in the nostalgia of seeing Mike back out there, great shape, moving around. But this is the second time, right? So Now I think people are going to more be focused on the art of it, you know. So what do you think? Are you interested from a you know, our resident expert perspective, and from a casual fan in terms of the excitement? Should I watch that, or should I go to Netflix?
I'll give you the best analogy. I watched Coming to America 2 simply because I saw how much continuity they put into it. And I knew it wasn't going to be what it was, but I wanted to see what they did with it.
Okay.
I want to see Mike and Evander at this stage, because same thing like what we saw at the Border Wars event. Imagine what it takes to even get to that level.
Right.
So, you know, what I said when the fight was happening, imagine, we might have waited 30 years for Mike Tyson to decide to take boxing seriously again. But that's always been the biggest what if. You know, what does that look like? What would that have looked like? And since we're in a sense of nostalgia, again, Cobra Kai, I mentioned Coming to America 2, it's practically nostalgic for us to see, because now there's a vehicle for us to see. Now, Evander, there's no doubt that he's been staying in shape. So you might look at his predicament and say he might be motivated more by the money. But I think it's good practice for these guys so they don't end up destitute like a lot of fighters that we know that have come and gone. Can't even pay for their own funeral. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I agree. And I also think, just kind of looking at it, you know, from 10,000 feet, for lack of a better term, like I've been kind of sitting and pondering in my mind, like Mike Tyson, right? And I think we got to give him a lot of credit now, right? We spent decades, I mean, I was a fan, you know, but I spent decades hearing people, you know, talk about all of his problems, right? Whether it be a relationship problem, whether it be mental health, whether it be addiction, right? Again, nobody's in his mind. I'm not following him around, but it very much seems like he has his life very much back in order, and he's in a good place mentally, right? And I say that by the evidence we see in terms of him being an advocate for, you know, mental health, right? Now, the older, more immature Mike Tyson, you know, we could see taking a different approach, right, to individuals that are embracing mental health issues and all of those, right? Kind of, was it Deontay Wilder that made those comments? It was chastising somebody for talking about their mental health. Excuse me if it wasn't, but I know somebody did. It was like within a year or so, within the last year.
Well, he made light of Tyson Fury's mental health issues.
Right. So I'm just talking about, kind of the immature mindset, right? You could see Mike Tyson 25 years ago, perhaps, going down that same road with an opponent, right? Whether he believed it or he was just playing the mind games. But I'm saying, in terms of him being an advocate, being out there and then living it, right? In terms of his coping, all of the things that we talk about in therapy, right? He's talking about his emotions, right? Those difficult emotions that he had and sitting with them. And he's using exercise, as an outlet, right? He's using exercise as an outlet for his stress, anxiety, all of those things, and we got to recognize, right? Like, the research has proven that boxing, exercise is going to improve our self-confidence, physical fitness, and our mental health as well. So I think we got to give him credit because, I mean, again, he's an advocate now, so beyond the fight, I mean, I was just playing, saying I was going to watch Netflix. I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to support him because, again, remember, and I gotta slow down with drawing these equivalencies all the time, but you know how Tim Tebow has a lot of fans that they don't really know what he does on the football field or when he was in training for for the Mets, right? So I'm kind of looking at it from that perspective. The nostalgia is still there. I had Mike Tyson Punch Out. He's one of my favorite boxers, but what he stands for right now is why he's getting my support. So I'll leave it at that. That's kind of why I'm interested. And if you look at the last fight, they got a lot of buys on pay-per-view, man. A lot of buys, So I'm not making any determinations here, but I wonder if that was all hardcore boxing fans, or if some of these was people that remember them fight parties back in the '90s and different things, and or just know Mike Tyson as a personality now.
They know from The Hangover,
Right, or his little cartoon or his podcast, it's a lot of different things. So again, that's just more evidence to what I just said. I think we got to give him credit, for pulling himself out of that hole, or whoever helped him with that, and being strong enough to be, out front talking about it, So that's that, All right, so listen, the next article that we looked at today is kind of, that's a good lead into the next one, because the next one, we're talking about mental health in boxing, right? Particularly the stigma around boxing, and kind of like the expectations of boxers, being tough guys, being unshakable, all of those things. So first of all, this is the author's opinion. So do you think that's true? And I'll ask my follow-up question later, but first of all, do you think that's true?
I think, boxing is for, I don't want to use the word depraved, but in a way where you have an aggression that you need to find a way to channel, because like I said, there's a guy, Gabriel Martella, he's like a preschool teacher, You find a lot of white collar individuals involve themselves in this, sort of box, and even just the training, even if it never gets to the point of competitive, it's the precision and the restraint required to excel in boxing, the repetition. So it's an easy thing to fall into, where there's so many, cognitive behavioral tools, and then there's, a lot of athletic, obviously, there's obviously athletic and anaerobic, benefits to it. But for me, I think toughness, so it's a mental toughness more so than it is a physical toughness, because I think people can, and there's a subtle difference, people can learn how to box. Any human being can learn how to box. But there's a difference between a person that's intrinsically a fighter, or they have a certain propensity. And that's more fight or flight. That's more fight or flight. And I think that changes why a person would invest their time into learning boxing. And people are confused over time. Not many fighters are necessarily tough guys physically. They don't get into barroom brawls and punch people up. I think they just have a certain way or a desire to get something off or to get something out or communicate in a way where boxing seems to be the language.
Now, along those lines, right, as you were talking, I'm thinking about the similarities, right? In therapy, you know, the biggest things right now are like mindfulness, coping skills, and all of those things, right? And boxing, all of the elements of it, when you talk about mindfulness and breathing techniques, all of these things, I can't help but think about the similarities, right? Because when you're in the boxing ring or when you're training, right, all of those elements of mindfulness are there, right? You got to be focused in the present moment. You got to have your attention, your concentration, focused on what punch you're gonna throw next, what combo you're gonna throw, how you're gonna defend yourself, what your footwork is like, you know, where you positioned in the ring, all of these things. You got to be in the present moment, right? These are all mindfulness techniques, right?
Absolutely.
And I don't know this for a fact, but I can assume that having control over your breath, you know, is a very important part of being able to stay on your feet and stay productive for 12 rounds, right? But these are all things that we do in the therapy session too, to accomplish the same thing, right? To keep that person grounded, keep them focused, you know, and keep them undistracted, right? So I was just, again, all of those similarities, that's what I was thinking about kind of when you were talking, right? Because these are the techniques that we teach people every day, right? So, but what I wanted to ask you, when we talk about kind of like the tough guy gene, whatever you want to call it, tough guy schema, I see it's kind of analogous to football players, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, they can't show any weakness. You got to get out there and play. You got cracked ribs, whatever, get out there and ball, right? So my question to you is like, to me, I would think that this could kind of create dissonance in somebody's mind, right? Because this is how you got to behave. So I'm sure when you get to the gym, you got to behave like that, right? When you're fighting, you got to behave like that. How do you think this bleeds over or doesn't bleed over to these individuals' personal lives, right? Like as a parent, as a friend, in a relationship, just casually, how do you feel about it? What do you think?
I think the first part is why, you know, because again, if you got that person that they have a certain sense of self-discipline and we got a good brother of ours, you know, designer, you know, real estate, you know, he's into boxing and you wouldn't know it from looking at him.
Right.
So he's mentally tough. Looking at him, you wouldn't suppose he's a tough man, but he's more mentally tough than a lot of people. Right. You know, he has a certain determination and a drive. So that kind of person in his personal life, he's going to be determined to achieve success. Now, the counterbalance is people that just have unhinged aggression. I think that's the wrong kind of person that you want to put in a position, and it could go two ways. You know, that kind of person, you put them in a scenario where they have to learn boxing. If they go through the process of humility and really knowing like, hey, once I'm outmatched, I'm undergunned, I got hit harder than I hit somebody else, that should bring you some sort of levity. But, you know, some people are clay and some people are stone, you know, and you chip away at stone and you mold clay. And even one thing you mentioned about, you know, the boxing and therapy, one of the biggest things is the trainer, fighter, boxer relationship. You know what I'm saying? Like having that openness, having that rapport, being able to say, yo, dog, I don't got a good left hook. You know, right. But I'm gonna work with you. You have to be, you know, the confidence you have, you know. So the guy that's just over aggressive and he's learning how to box, the hope, the idea, you know, is for him to become humble in a way where he has the experience to realize that aggression hasn't even served him well in his training. You know, even if the life lessons, maybe incarceration or bad relationships with people hasn't taught him that aggression isn't beneficial. Hopefully he get in the ring or he get in there with a coach and they give him an experience to where he say, yo, that aggression worked against me this time.
Now, another part of this article was, you know, was talking about Tyson Fury. We were talking about him a little bit earlier, but they were getting very specific, you know, using quotes and examples from his life. Of when he experienced suicidal ideation. I think it was going into the Wilder fight, right? And he actually talked about suicidal thoughts and kind of having a plan, driving towards a bridge, all of these things. And although, you know, that's something that I deal with fairly regularly, I know you deal with, you know, and you're 9 to 5. it was surprising to me, right? Only because it was surprising to me initially until I kind of digested it, right? Because again, we have this tendency to put people on this pedestal, right?
Sure.
And here is this guy that has millions of fans. He got kids out there, you know, who's shadow boxing, trying to be like him. You know, there's no financial issues, you know, but internally he's struggling, right? So in my mind, like I have to feel like, you know, like, well, I feel like, you know, it's got to almost be the loneliest feeling in the world. You know, it's kind of like how they say it's lonely at the top, you know. I could kind of understand the mentality of once you get there, you know, it's like, unless you have a relationship, like you said, with that trainer, you can say, listen, I'm struggling. I need help. I need this, I need that. You know, like, who you going to go to? You know?
And think about it like this. He won the Klitschko fight, won the championship of the world, right? Klitschko was the champ for 12 years. Tyson Fury dethroned him.
Right.
He was so manic, he went on a coke binge and he had to vacate the belts. Not that anything bad happened, just
right.
the nature of the disability. He was so manic, he went on a days, at the minimum, to my recollection, at least a 3-day coke binge. He ballooned up to 369 pounds.
But that, again, right, that's why mental health is such a monster, right? Because that's the part that people don't really talk about, right? Because the mania, right? He was feeling good. He wasn't feeling horrible. You know, I'm not saying he was feeling normal. He was obviously very dysregulated.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But mania isn't generally a bad feeling for how most people report it. You know, so but yet we look at all these the negative impact of it. So again, I just think us as fans, right, promoters, right, trainers, whatever, we got to change our perspective that mental health makes you weak, right? Because if Tyson Fury was helping his significant other or his kids move and he broke his ankle, everybody would understand why he pulled out of the fight, right? No questions asked. Guy got a broken leg, he can't move, right? You know, but if you're experiencing clinically significant anxiety or suicidal thoughts, you do not get the same empathy. Suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
It's crazy. As somebody who sprains their ankle, you know, so we have to change our, you know, perception, right? Because, I mean, again, we've had numerous examples, especially in the NFL over the last couple of years, right?
Absolutely.
Of what happens, you know, when we adopt this philosophy that mental health doesn't matter, you know, and that our athletes got to be warriors all the time, right? We see what happens in their personal lives, you know. And sometimes we see what happens, you know, we see it kind of intersect with real life, because wasn't that Alden Smith who had all those incidents like at the facility and all of that stuff?
Yeah.
Listen, this stuff is real, you know. And the one commonality that you see when people are talking afterwards is everybody knew what was going on, right? Nobody was surprised.
So to that point, you have a trainer, right? They could do you like, you know, Mike Tyson's, his earlier handlers, right? They knew he was getting high. They knew he was doing this and doing that. Yeah, Mike, you got it. You the best in the world. Versus somebody that actually care about you and say, man, you have to vacate them belts and get yourself into a clinic, because I won't even train you if you ain't serious. If that's what you want to do, go ahead and do that. But if you're serious about being a champ, you got to get your life together.
Right.
You know?
Man, it's a fact, you know. All right, so this last joint, you know, I don't want to spend too much time on it because it was kind of just a fun thing I just wanted to talk to you about. But this is nutrition, mood, and boxing, right? And they were basically just talking, it's well established, you know, that a good diet is key for not only physical health, you know, but mental health. But they were kind of focusing on the opposite end of it, right? Like what happens when your diet gets out of control. So they were talking about the Super Size Me documentary that everybody is probably familiar with, where 30 days, I think the guy had to eat all his meals from McDonald's, right?
Sure.
And the important part about this is, obviously, we could guess that at the end of the 30 days, you know, his blood pressure was off the chain, cholesterol, his weight, but the mental health effects, right? They're talking about headaches, low energy, depression, right? Again, I know that a mood is I mean, in terms of positive, helping positive coping habits, right? Like a good diet is critical, right? But think about it. We got depressive symptoms, low energy and headaches just from 30 days, right? So I guess just very simply, I don't need no elaborate answer because my real question is coming next. But how important do you think a good diet is to boxing, to a boxer or athlete? And do you think that it changes with age or whatever? Because, some of these younger athletes, we kind of see eating whatever they want.
Well, it's absolutely, as far as boxing goes, it's the foundation because it's the weight classes. And so you can immediately judge a fighter if they're not able to make weight on a consistent bet. That was the knock against Gervonta Davis. They say, damn, you fighting at a certain weight class and you can't even make weight. Where's your discipline? You knew you had this fight for 4 months. You can't make 130 pounds. So you can draw inference. I'll give you another one, David Benavidez. He couldn't clear a drug test, and cocaine only stays in your system 48 hours. So if you can't put it down for 2 days, it is clearly beyond recreational. You know what I'm saying? Even if you want to classify it as such. So diet, exercise, it's absolute because you lose your belt on the scale, or you just continue to misrepresent yourself, or you show yourself to be unprofessional. So the right diet and the right exercise, and it can go another way too. Sometimes, you cut weight and you can drain your body. You can be a little bit unhealthy, that could be, because of, certain undisciplines, and then you try to take a bunch of laxatives and run with Abilene and preparation H, you're going to pass out. Or it just could be, a kind of unrealistic desire to get down to a weight that is not really healthy for your body. So you really have to find the mental balance too.
Good, all good points. So just from a casual fan perspective, when I look on social media, when I watch these documentaries, I see Floyd Mayweather jogging at 4 o'clock in the morning and eat McDonald's every day.
Yeah.
Fries. Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, I started eating Taco Bell one time when I was training because I said Floyd went through the drive-thru eating Taco Bell.
So is it cap or is it real? Like what's going on? Because obviously he's one of the greatest to have ever done it. So if anybody can forgo their diet and do it, it would be him. We know how hard he trains. But what do you think, man? Because that's all that I was thinking about when I was reading this article.
And again, it's all about moderation. You got to remember, Floyd might eat McDonald's, but when he woke up, he had a chef prepare whatever he had in the house. I'm sure. I mean, again, I could be wrong. I don't think he's eating McGriddles from there. You know what I'm saying? Right. If he gets some egg whites in the morning and blah, 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 and then by the time his cheat meal, you know what I'm saying?
That's a fact.
Or he says, yo, I'm supposed to be fighting Canelo at 152 pounds anyway. So I have to put on weight. I walk around at 156 and I usually fight at 147. I'm fighting a man at 152. I don't even got to do no cardio. All I got to do is box and bulk up. So he can afford to eat Taco Bell because, he might be carb loading at that point. So you can eat what you want so long as you working it off. But remember those things that, are going to, affect your energy and your blood sugar,
Okay. All right. So we at that time again, where we do the education part, the ABCs of boxing. We review some basic techniques or, strategies. So we're going to talk about the importance of a routine and muscle memory today. And then we'll talk a little bit about the basic technique, like using the X, right? So what is the importance of a routine, maintaining that? You was lecturing me about that in the backyard the other day, and the importance of muscle memory and how it impacts your movement. So talk to us about that.
Well, you absolutely got to get, your fundamentals. The purpose of routine is just to reinforce your fundamentals. If you don't get your fundamentals down, you're building on a shaky foundation. So you just have to really make sure that you get your repetition in, you're getting your adjustments, and you need time. Suppose you think you're doing something the right way and you're doing it wrong. So you got to get that routine going. You got to get your adjustments because you want those movements to become natural over time. So the biggest key is adjustments, training, repetition.
Okay. Well, listen, man, I'm looking forward to it. We're gonna document. You know, you way farther ahead than me, but we're gonna document my progress. You know, in terms of the footwork and all of that from the beginning. And we're not putting that footage out right now, but you know, we're gonna document that journey because you know, like I said, you know, you already know I'm incorporating that into my workout routine. So let's talk about the X, right? Like, what's the importance of it? I ain't never heard of it until you was telling me about it, and I saw it on the floor. So what are the benefits? What do people use it for?
You got to learn how to dance, man. It's for your footwork. So when you put it on the floor, it's just making a cross or an X. And when you get into your fight stance, you know, you're always going to have, depending on your stance, you're always going to have your lead foot forward and your other foot a good distance back, depending on your size and your height. And this is where the adjustments come in. Your coach will tell you what they think is a good distance given your body type. But the premise is you want to be able to advance up and down each of those lines, go, you know, horizontal and vertical, and keeping the same distance and keeping your feet placement in order. So not tripping over yourself and not stumbling or leading with the wrong foot. That's all about balance. Without balance, you don't have any power. You don't have the ability to move because you're already off balance. So you put a cross on the ground, you put your X on the ground, and you got to learn how to dance. And it's almost, you know, you're in and out. You're advancing forward, and then you step backward. Advance to the left, getting your lateral movement, then advance to the right. So you're getting your movement because you're going to need to not just punch on the move, you're going to need to defend yourself on the move. So
Right.
that's very important. Again, a very important fundamental that if you don't have a heavy bag or any of those tools, that's something that you need to know even before you know how to throw a punch.
And that's what I was going to ask you because it's starting to sound like, at least for me, you know, the X and the rope work is kind of like you need to put in a couple of weeks of that before you start punching on the bag, right? Because
absolutely, I would definitely recommend that.
Okay, all right, good stuff. All right, so listen, as we always do, you know, the last part, you know, of the hour, or however long we are, we like to give, you know, some shine either to some local fighters, or we want to talk about some upcoming interesting fights. Or it could just be your minute to reflect. But let us know, is there anything coming up, you know, that we should know about? Is there anybody locally, PA, New York, Jersey, that we should look out for?
First,
what's up?
I'm gonna shout out Michael Williams Jr. This kid is his family's they're from Jersey, but they down in North Carolina. And the reason why I'm shouting him out is because I mean people can go and look up the history. He's got a good reputation as far as what he can do as a young fighter, a young prospect. But what's happened is we're getting a new proliferation of young black fighters with their fathers involved. So you see a lot of cats out there with their sons, and it's beautiful. But and that's what I like to see. And I had the opportunity to ask him a question, and I just simply asked him, outside of the sport, what else are you teaching your son? So he's teaching him the security business, armed security, event security, and things like that. And as a fighter, he got a little smoke with Devin Haney and his father, Bill Haney. So it's one of the things to where, it's one of them things to where they want to meet up with a bag full of money and say, look, your son versus my son, and we spar for some bread. So again, it's no harm in it. It's healthy resolution. Michael Williams Jr., Team Williams Jr., 150. They're doing it big. They running around with that black bag trying to fight everybody, man.
All right, listen, I can't be mad at that. You know, listen, I like to see that though too. You know what I mean? You know, we saw that at the Boxing Voice event. You know, fathers training their kids. It's a great way to bond. You know, a great way to build kind of self-esteem, self-confidence in the kids. And it's great exercise. So you know, that's great advice.
And one last thing, as far as events this weekend, because and people might have seen the post, and it's just, again, I got to reiterate, we're talking about a response to adversity. So this weekend, you got Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte, earlier this year, when he was on his way to decide, you know, whether he was going to fight the winner of, you know, AJ or whatever, he's always outside of heavyweight contention. The man got knocked out by an uppercut, right? I even used him in my bars, battle bars, right? But here's the difference. Dillian Whyte, that happened to him, you know what he did? He brushed it off and said, yo, I got a rematch clause. No worries. He's training. He's ready. That fight is Saturday, right? Response to adversity. It's difficult for me to understand as far as, being, people that consider themselves, fighters. Mm-hmm. How do you not get back in there and fight? So I ain't taking no shots. I'm just saying, this is why that fight matters. People could say Povetkin is old, Dillian Whyte ain't this, but he also ain't hiding. He also ain't on social media playing the piano. He's getting back in there and doing what resilient people do, and that's what makes a person a fighter. That's the difference between a fighter and a boxer. A lot of jokers can learn how to box, but only a fighter will get up and not be ashamed to continue fighting.
Listen, that's a fact. I think we're gonna end with that. So listen, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Championship rounds. This is round 2. I'm gonna let you take me out with the bell, bro. All right. See y'all next time.